So welcome to another one of our FTC workshops brought to you by FRC Team 568, the Nerds of the North. So this FTC workshop is about how to make a great engineering documentation that will impress the judges. So the topics we will cover are going to be what is an engineering notebook and what is an engineering documentation? What are the judges looking for? Team dynamics with the engineering notebook. Some tips for creating it while in a remote situation. Some tools to consider using, and some samples we will show of the engineering documentation. We expect you to mute your microphones while the panelists are presenting, and we expect that when you have the questions, you can put it in the chat and I can bring them to the panelists so they can answer it. So Alexa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Alexa Todd. I am the team captain of JBOD's team 5223. I was on the FRC team for 2 years, 1 year as vice president. I did FLL for 6 years. I've been to Worlds 4 times, supposed to be 5, but COVID. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Steve, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Hi, I'm Steve Ives. I am a retired electrical engineer and I've been a first volunteer for 9 years. I've done a number of different judging jobs and am the current FTC judge advisor for the state of Alaska. I've also judged at super regionals and at Worlds. And I'm one of the engineering mentors for Nerds of the North, FRC team.
Thank you, Steve. Vicky, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. My name is Vicky Nakadomo. I am the K-12 STEM Outreach Coordinator for the UAA College of Engineering. I'm also been involved with FIRST for 13 years. This is my 14th year with FIRST. And I've actually been with FTC since its second year in existence as a program. So it's been kind of fun to watch this program evolve. I've coached FLL, FTC, and I'm the current coach of the one of the co-coaches of the FRC team. So one of the roles I played in relation to this topic here today is that I coached FTC teams that were in rural southwest part of the state and had students from 6 different villages collaborating on one team. And we were able to maintain an engineering notebook collaboratively across an area the size of West Virginia. And so this kind of remote collaboration over an engineering documentation actually won the team the Think Award several times. I had teams go to super regionals and worlds, and a big part of that being the engineering notebook. So I've got some tips to share with you today. My students are all retired and moved on to college, so it's me.
Thank you, Vicky. And also, I know we have Josh as well. So before we get in, Josh, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
My name is Joshua Bell. I'm here with Alexa. I've done FIRST since kindergarten, so this would be my 14th year doing something related to it. Last year I was the president of the FRC team, and I've been a part of several FTC and FLO teams since a while. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you very much. So without further ado, why don't we get started on what is an engineering notebook and an engineering documentation?
Hi. An engineering notebook is documentation that journals your season, and in it you'll have your design, outreach, system level designs, brainstorming solutions. What it needs to be is your journey for this particular season in all aspects of your team. This year things are going to be a little bit different. In addition to an engineering notebook, you're going to be doing an engineering portfolio, which is a summary of your engineering notebook. And that's the first thing that judges are going to look at, is that engineering profile, portfolio. So, but in order to compile that portfolio, you really need to do an engineering notebook so that you've got all that documentation. Because one of the things that's going to happen is that judges, after looking at your engineering portfolio, are going to say, maybe I need a little more information, or I'm going to need to look at your engineering notebook.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
I'd like to
So-
chime in on that, if that's okay.
Yep.
So I would add that in the world of FIRST, we have a tendency to think about these ingredients as what do the judges think, or what are the judges looking for? And I think that's cool, and it's competitive, and that's awesome. That's very firsty of all of us to be thinking about the judges and the awards affiliated. But I also wanted to point out that the engineering notebook is an actual real world tool that engineers use. And so I would encourage you all to also adopt this, not just for the awards and the judging attached, but for the actual resource it can be for your team. If you are working on a system on your robot, and then you, I don't know, get some kind of awesome travel opportunity and go off on a trip, and your team has to continue on without you for a brief time, they should be able to see the journey and the documentation of what you were working on. And sometimes as a team, you are each working on separate things, and that's okay. But the documentation to know what each person is doing and what has worked and what has failed, someone should be able to pick up your notebook at the end of the season and rebuild your whole journey, the failures and the successes. So I would just add to also think about it as the real world tool that it is.
In addition to that, one of the things that is in, which is uppermost in a judge's mind, is if they can take your engineering notebook and build your robot from it. So you need to have your documentation at least that level of detail.
Is there anything else the other panelists would like to say?
We do, well, in our engineering notebook, we also document outreach as well. And I think all teams should do that. So documenting all of the events you do. And if you actually go to the FIRST website and kind of read up on outreach events, there's 3 different categories. And so I'll try, there's FIRST, there's like FIRST outreach, so volunteering at like FLL events, FTC events, and then there's community. So this is just, I don't know an example of that, but community, and then industry, I think. Yeah. And so adding those kind of events too. And then we also document all of our team meetings, putting what you do for every meeting.
Thank you, Alexa.
One of the things that we want to see is your involvement with both the engineering community, the general public, as well as FIRST.
I'll also put a plug in there that there is a future workshop that's specifically focused on outreach. So I think documenting your outreach in your engineering notebook is a really practical way to keep track of it. But then also diving more into those 3 categories, encourage you to visit or come to the next workshop or one of the future workshops that's focused on outreach.
And one of the other things that we're looking for also in the engineering notebook is your sustainability plans, business plans, your funding plans. Those types of things are very much a necessity if you're going to get one of the awards.
Okay, so if there's no other input from the other panelists, I believe we can move on. to what the judges are looking for in the engineering documentation?
Detail. Or what, the more detail, the better. Because the judges want to see what you do and how you did it. And that's in all, in both the hard and soft portions of it, in your outreach and your design and your thought processes for innovation. These are, the more detailed, the better off it is, as far as the judges are concerned. As I said, on the portfolio, you're going to give indications of what that detail is like in your engineering notebook itself. And as this is new this year, it's going to be kind of interesting to see how well that's going to play out. Because it's going to be new for the judges as well.
Is there something else the other panelists would like to add as well? Not, we can also move on to the next one. The team dynamics with the engineering notebooks.
I can jump in for this part. So team dynamics, last week, I think, was the RACI presentation. And we use RACI when we work with our engineering notebook. So there's one person accountable, person in charge of the notebook, who kind of just leads the team on filling it out, keeping everyone accountable for putting their part in the engineering notebook, or at the end of the meeting, going to everyone and say, hey, okay, can you kind of fill out and talk about what you did today? Or assigning people the pieces that they need to do. So if we go and if Josh and Mitchell go and do an outreach event, then making sure that they fill out all the information that we need about that outreach event. But kind of what was said at the beginning, everyone needs to participate. It can't just be me or another member that's filling it out, because if a judge, our thing is, if a judge walks up to you and points to this page, you should kind of know what happened. We should kind of be able to talk about what was going on. So everyone should just be kept up to date with it, should be able to, should be able to fill it out and participate.
I'd like to, oh, sorry, were you gonna? No, okay. I'd like to add that as far as the team dynamics of the engineering notebook, I think one thing that made the Sun Chasers successful with their engineering notebook for many seasons in a row is that they adopted it as part of the team's culture. And from the very, very beginning of the season, even if it was before kickoff, every year we established as a team and thought through, what do we want the structure of the notebook to look like this year? They adopted that structure and then they integrated that into the format of their team meetings. So the way that the Sun Chasers did it was every team meeting we'd get together. We'd look back at the previous entry in the notebook, where we would have sort of notes on where they left off and what needed still to be done. So you could always revisit, okay, what task, who needed to work on these wheels or whatever. We could carry those over to the next meeting. And we ended up using the notebook itself to structure the meeting. So I'm actually going to briefly share. Yeah, I'm gonna kick your screen off for a second, Toya. But I want to just share, just so you can see, just an example of, we would come into the beginning of the day, we'd sit down, this is practice number 29. They got all of this, every season, they kind of decided on a slightly different structure, and that's dependent on their previous season's experience or the individuals on the team that year. And so this particular season, they decided they wanted to list the date, the start and end time, members present. And then they decided they basically had like 5 or 6 sub-departments, and each day they wanted to document what was accomplished in each one of those. And so we would sit down and these rows were consistent every time. Is there a right or wrong way to do this? No, again, it kind of flexed. But what was kind of neat is the members present would sit down and come up with and collaborate as a team what needed to be prioritized during that meeting, and they would list that task, and then individuals on the team would put their initials in the task that they were working on or chose to elected to work on during that meeting. Then at the end of the meeting, everybody would sit down and write their reflection on how that task went. That was their opportunity to say, okay, this is the progress made, or these are the things we tried and they did or didn't work. The other thing is that this is, because it was an electronic notebook and not a written notebook, it does tend to look a little bit more text heavy than a lot of your handwritten ones where they are a lot more drawings. So we ended up including systems where you would bold C figure and then include the figures in the tables below it. So that way individuals could upload and still write. If you preferred graph paper, you could use graph paper. If you preferred dots, you could use dots, or plain paper. You could use images. You could draw out those designs still and insert them into the picture as a picture in the Google Doc, and then reference that in your reflection or your task. So every member was part of the engineering notebook process. And I think that's also just really important. Alexa said it, I'm saying it. I think it's really important. I've seen a lot of teams where they treat it as someone who's in charge of the engineering notebook is essentially being a journalist. And that is not the intent of the engineering notebook by FIRST or in the real world. So you shouldn't have a person going around interviewing and saying, what'd you do today? And then trying to find a flowery way to write it. It should truly be their words. And if it can be full of flaws and mistakes, and that's okay. Like if there's misspellings, that's okay, it's authentic. I mean, try, but it's authentic.
And I would add that that's certainly one of the things that judges look for, is we want to see total team participation.
Well, thank you, Vicky and Alexa, for showing off a sample of the engineering notebook. Makes me want to change my engineering notebook as well. So is there any more tips for creating the documentations when we are in a remote situation?
I can start. Our team uses Dropbox, which is pretty positive, costs money, but some sort of cloud service where like if I work on it at 3 o'clock today, I save it, I close it, then Jackson across town can open it up on his computer and start working on it. With Google Docs and those kind of Google services, you can have multiple people on there at a time editing. With Dropbox, it can really only be one person at a time. My team used to use LucidPress. And that was kind of like Google Docs, but you could log into it anywhere and anyone could use it, but you still couldn't have multiple people on there at a time. Or on Zoom calls at the end of the meeting, just go one person at a time and just have one person kind of type it up or share access over Zoom.
I would add that regardless of what platform you're using, most like Word, or if you've got a Word document in Dropbox, or you have Google Docs, you have some option for using headers and then inserting a table of contents. And it can become a really unmanageable document if it's just hundreds and hundreds of pages. We've brought in engineering notebooks that were hundreds of pages long. It can be a lot to go through. So if you use a table of contents and headers, and again, make that part of your consistent formatting and structure for your notebook, then you can actually use the table of contents to navigate. So the example I showed you a moment ago, if you click on the date and you always make the date like a header 1, you can, within your table of contents, click on it and it will jump you to that part of the notebook. And then we also always put in the footer a link that jumped you back to the top of the notebook so that you can, I think it just makes it easier on every person who's using the notebook, and the easier you make it for everybody to navigate, the higher participation I think you'll get from your team. And again, I just really loved when at the end of meetings, we'd all sit down and you could see, like, that's one reason we went with Google Docs. I love that you could see everybody's cursors blinking all over the page, writing their updates at the end of a meeting, inserting pictures they may have taken. I'd also say another plus for Google Docs, if you haven't played around with it yet, it's you can insert drawings into a Google Doc. So there are times when I remember for a while, First was real big on the idea of like, this is not a photo album. Don't just slap together a bunch of pictures and put some stickers on it and call it an engineering notebook. But if you can insert pictures, but a lot of times it's helpful if you annotate what it is you're trying to show about the picture. So is it that you attach something in a certain way? If you can insert a drawing using Google Docs, and you just go to the insert menu, go to drawing, you can put your picture in there, but then you can draw and write and annotate, and then it just pops it right into the document for you. So you can have anything from hand drawn to written out to pictures to drawings, like computer drawings.
Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else that you would like to add? And if not, we can talk about some of the tools for engineering documentation.
Oops, I already did. That's what I just shared.
Was there something else that comes up to one of your panelists' mind?
I was just thinking right now, I think one other thing that early on in Engineering Notebook, I don't think it's a natural thing for everybody on the team to put their like words and drawings and reflections in a really practical way into the notebook. So I will say it is really helpful if early in the season, you kind of crack down hard on what the purpose and intent is of the notebook and get that system going earlier rather than later. I know we're already in the season, but if it was a typical off season, I'd roll it out way before season kickoff and get everybody into the system of it, and even have a team lead on it who might be watching people with the entries and say, oh, hey, that's a really good place. You should include a picture. Or, hey, right there, could you explain exactly what didn't work when you attached it? And I think that's a good way to train the team into better, more robust reflections and use of the notebook.
Okay. I know we have seen some sample engineering notebooks already, but I do see Alexa and Josh have their sample engineering notebook.
Yes, I can. You
I
want me
can
to show
toss
it more?
here, so it is easier to see.
Okay. This is book 1, and this is book 2. These were the 2 that we submitted at state, which I can completely understand why they're now saying to do a portfolio and not the huge books. So in the first book, we have the team, we have tabs here that have, we have our table of contents, and we highlight all of the pages that we want them to look at, and we put yellow tabs, and we put a page in the beginning that lists all the pages that they can look at, that we want them to look at. And so, yeah, so we have engineering. So we have an engineering section that's purely building and CAD. And then we have a programming section that's separate from that. And every team should do this, and we learned that the hard way because we didn't completely understand this award at first, but the control award. And so we actually, if I can get this, we put a packet in our engineering notebook. You can unzip and pull out the control award while also submitting it where you're supposed to submit it, but we put an extra that they can pull out and look at, just because it's another place for them to look at this award to see our code all together. And in that packet, we printed out a page of every single piece of our code that we use. Which reminds me, comment your code. And then we have a section that's team meetings, and can't really lift this up very well, but we have like, I don't know if you guys can see this very well, it's kind of heavy, but we have like our agenda, and then we kind of put a heading where we just talk about everything we did. Lots of pictures are important, but words are more important. Email, like putting in emails of something you did, text, as long as they're okay, putting in text with someone. I would text Katie Johnson a lot because she's kind of my programming mentor. And so I would put text of our conversations about programming in the programming section, because that's a connection to someone outside of our team. That's a mentor, it's getting help. Yeah, so that's kind of, I can talk more about it if people have questions, but oh, handwritten notes, we print it out, but then sometimes we kind of go back and look through it and we add like handwritten side notes. So, yeah.
I'd like to add a couple of useful, I guess, some tips and tricks as far as like integrating the notebook once again into the culture of the team and how like your meeting structure and everything. Again, I do think that's a big key to success and actually helping your whole team embrace engineering documentation. One thing that we did, I'm going to share screen again, is we used a lot of tables to collaborate as a team to make decisions and weigh out those options between the decisions that are being made. And so here's just an example of, it's a little bit of a ways ago, a long time ago, way back when, 2013. But I just was looking for one of these example tables where basically different team members came up with and generated different ideas, but then collectively as a team, and this can be done when your team members are in 20 different places, they were all collectively at the same time going between all the different ideas and documenting their perceptions of what were strengths and weaknesses of all options. And then afterwards had a discussion as a team and weighed those out. And then in this table, placed their vote on which one to go with. And so I think that that's one way that, again, the engineering notebook can be more than just drawing down your ideas, but actually showing the process. Now that was one of the earlier ones, so you don't see any kind of conclusion there, but later on we started requiring in our conclusion what they decided to go with and kind of justifying and explaining that, because it seemed more reflective of the rationale behind the decision, so that, again, going with the idea of someone else picking up your notebook and learning from your team's mistakes or decisions or what was weighed out in the process. This is all part of the journey and all documented. So in this case, again, they looked at pros and cons and then made a decision on each one of those.
Okay, thank you. I think we have a question for Alexa, and that is, what is in the second notebook?
Yes. Okay, the second notebook is literally just outreach. It is, so as I said earlier, we divide it. So we have industry outreach, community outreach, first outreach, and then 2 small sections that just kind of go over our compass and promote video. So this is just, so if I go to, we flew to Antioch last year and we mentored some kids, well, like 30 kids for 3 or 4 days on my birthday, very fun. And so just documenting all of the outreach we did was just in this book. The one thing I wanted to show was, can't see it very well. They sent us thank you letters. So this is just all of the thank you letters because each one of them wrote us, the J-Bots, wrote us a letter, and it was just so cute, and it's just a good way to show like your outreach, and I mean, it's adorable. You're a little robot, like. So this whole notebook is just outreach and showing all of the outreach that we did.
Thank you, Alexa. So if there's any other questions, I would be happy to present them to the panelists. And final call for questions, there none? Ooh, okay, how much of the engineering section should be daily entry versus overall engineering?
I guess, and I mean like final design. Okay. I'm not speaking from a judge perspective, but I think that from the experience that I've had with teams is we always had the engineering notebook that was ongoing all season long. And then we kind of had these extras that you sort of put on before your performance, really like performance when you're going to competition. So you'd have this dense notebook and then all those things Alexa was describing, like the award or your programming and all of these things that are just sort of these extra, like if you were to really look in the real world at the concept of an engineering notebook, those would have nothing, like that would not exist, right? It's a first thing and it's because you're going to competition. So we always saw that as part of the, we're prepping to travel, now we add that in, and never really saw that as part of the engineering documentation leading up to, because you're seeing snippets of it as you build and grow and change and evolve your design, right? And so I would say, personally, my take, and Steve, you can jump in if this is out of line, but is that the actual engineering notebook itself should be more focused on that journey. And then some of your add-ons at the end are more like, here's the documentation of your final design. And that, like if you went to say in a normal season, I don't know what this year would look like, but if you went to like a regional, that's going to look different at one competition. And then when you go to the next competition, maybe at state, maybe whatever you throw on in the end is maybe an appendix that's a outline of your final design. Maybe you do decide to include something like that, but that should not change your engineering notebook itself. That all that documentation, all that journey remained the same. So to me, the majority of it should be your journey. And then all those other add-ons that FIRST has created are kind of outside of that notebook in addition to.
And from a judge's perspective, it depends on the team. It's what the team's decision as to how they want to weight their engineering notebook. As long as they have the requirements in there, the judges will look at the content then. But as one of the things I would really like to make sure is that read the game manual. There are requirements for each award. There are requirements that need to be in the engineering notebook. Put them in the engineering notebook. And one of the things that we've started concentrate on the last couple of years is mathematics. We want to see formulas. We want to see calculations.
Thank you very much. We have another question This is, would you use Google Slides or Google Docs?
I would say Google Docs, because I think you can do, more play with it, I guess, and I would do Google Docs or Lucid Press, which is also free.
I would agree with that.
Google Docs will give you more control than you have over Google Slide.
Like I mentioned earlier, using headers and tables of contents and tables and being able to link within the document, all of those bells and whistles you won't have with Google Docs or Slides, sorry. So I would go with Google Docs as well.
And one of the things I can tell you from an engineer perspective, I wrote all my engineering projects in Word. And I wrote thousands of them over 40 years.
If you have questions about Google Docs, I'm happy to, like I noticed that there was a question about saying that you had trouble with formatting. You're always welcome to reach out to me. I'm happy to help help you guys troubleshoot that.
Yeah, is there any other questions? We'd be happy to take them. So here's not a question, but perhaps some tips from the panelists, because the person has said that the picture formatting throws the pages off. So perhaps, are there any tips for that?
Can I actually ask for you guys to clarify for me? The picture formatting would throw the page off. How so? And I think it's probably okay if you guys just unmute and tell me if you're comfortable with that.
When we would do the add pictures and things into the page, it would throw out all the formatting below. Like, so it would just throw everything, we'd have to renumber, rechange, reformat everything when things were adjusted.
Wow. Huh. I've not had that happen, so I guess I'd have to like see it happen. What's that?
Did you put a hard page? Did you put a hard page break at the end of every entry?
Yes. Well, at the end of, so we structured the meetings, the entries by meetings, and at the end, insert a page break after. So that kind of helps so that if you're kind of near the end of the page, either way, it's always going to start your next entry at the top of another page. Also, we started including images inside of tables, but that was just to be able to do text accompanying the image. So that might be something you want to try. But that way it could always be linked to it, almost like a caption with an image. But I never had to we never had to renumber things and stuff like that. So that's, I'd have to kind of see it, I think.
I think the renumbering came in because they were, they're shy. They don't want to talk. So I'm talking for them.
Okay.
So she's telling me every time I mute, she's like, maybe this. And I'm like, okay. I think the renumbering came in because maybe she should do each thing in a different Google Doc, right? So you were doing community outreach at the end of everything. And so then she was having renumbering, changing so that each thing had their own number type. Is that what it is?
So one thing, so it's kind of on a technical side, but I've had seasons where the team kept two different documents, one for more of your documentation throughout the season for outreach and one for more your technical side, because they like to keep those two very clearly separate. And then I had teams where they combined them, but then they wanted, like you're describing, maybe you had images that were building in numbers, but you wanted the outreach ones to be building a different, maybe it was a different numbering system. You can use different header formats. You could have like a header 1 is your meeting date, but then maybe like a header 2 is your number system for your like engineering drawings, but then maybe a header 3 is for your outreach, and that'll kind of stack them. I can show you if you guys want. I can like we can do a chat afterwards and we could take a look at it.
She said sure, but she said she doesn't have the notebook to
Okay.
see to show hers.
Okay, because it's kind of vague to just explain and describe. But.
Yeah. And was there another question you had about it? No. Okay.
Okay. Well, maybe some other time if you I'm happy to help you troubleshoot if I can be of help.
I do have another question though. Ours, and this is just like as a coach too, when we're submitting it, when we're having our kids submit it, it's best for them to save it on a PDF and submit it, or give them links to the Google Doc.
Steve, do you have thoughts on that for what the judges prefer?
We would prefer to see a PDF rather than a link.
Can
And
you
have
create
that.
those internal links you were talking about with a PDF?
Yes, you
Vicky?
can.
Okay.
Yes, sorry, I got distracted. I also saw Emma's question. Yeah, sounds like maybe we need a Google Doc workshop too. I sure love Google Docs.
Are there any other questions? Well, if there's no other questions, then thank you very much for joining. I hope to see you guys in the upcoming workshops. So the next workshop will be about 3D modeling. This will be on October 28th. After that, another workshop will be on building and maintaining team websites. This will be on November 4th. And outreach, another workshop after that will be about outreach, November 11th. Again, thank you very much for joining. And thank you to the panelists for presenting for us as well.